The Watcher in the Woods. Ethan and I had been best friends since we were kids, the kind of bond where we could sit in silence for hours and still feel like we were having a conversation. We both loved the outdoors, especially camping. That weekend, we'd planned a short trip into the deep forests of Maine. It was familiar territory for me. I'd been there more times than I could count. For Ethan, though, it was his first visit to this particular spot. We hiked several hours down a narrow trail, pushing through thick branches and the occasional spiderweb, until we reached this clearing tucked away like a secret. You wouldn't find it unless you knew where to look. We got there around 6 in the evening. The air was crisp, and the birds were still chirping. We set up camp quickly: tent, supplies, fire pit. The usual routine. Once we had the fire going, we made some food, cracked open a couple beers, and just sat there. The sun melted behind the trees, bathing everything in this warm, golden light. It was calm. Perfect, real. But calm never lasts. Maybe 2 hours into the night, the fire was popping quietly, and we were just talking about random things, life, work, dumb stories from school. Then, something rustled just beyond the circle of light. It wasn't loud. Just the faint sound of something shifting in the darkness, dry leaves crushed under something. We both turned to look. Nothing. The firelight only stretched so far, and beyond that, it was pure black. I remember we stared into the woods for a while, expecting maybe to see glowing eyes or movement. But nothing. We wrote it off. Probably just a raccoon. Maybe a fox. Out here, animals are always poking around. It barely even made a dent in the mood. We eventually poured water over the fire and called it a night. Slid into our tents. Fell asleep. The next morning, we were up with the sun. There was a reason I loved this spot so much, and it wasn't just the peace and quiet. About half a mile through the woods, there's this private pond. Not marked on any trail maps. Practically untouched. It has a tiny waterfall and a little river flowing through it. We spent hours there. Just sitting on the rocks, skipping stones, cooling off in the water. It was perfect. But that feeling, that fragile peace, only lasted until the sun started dipping again. We hadn't gathered firewood yet for the night, and most of the dry sticks around camp had already been burned. So I went off to scavenge some. Ethan said he was going to take a walk and maybe explore a bit, said he'd grab some wood on his way back. Typical Ethan. He liked his little solo walks. Said it helped him recharge. So I let him go. I kept collecting firewood, tossing it into a growing pile. After a while, I sat down and waited. Still no Ethan. The sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the ground. The air turned cooler, still. It had been way too long since Ethan left. He was usually back within 20 minutes, 30 tops. Out here, there's no cell signal. But we had satellite messengers, small devices we kept strapped to our waists. They're mostly for emergencies, but you can use them to send short messages too. I pulled mine out to check in with him. He'd already messaged me. I got kind of lost, he wrote. But I stumbled back to the pond. Weird. But not terrible. He knew the rule: if you get lost, don't wander. Stay put. Stay there, I replied. I'll come get you. And just like that, I took off, half jogging through the woods as the last of the daylight slipped away. I was maybe 5 minutes from the pond when my device buzzed again. Another message. I see you. I stopped cold. What? I see you. I looked around. Nothing. No sign of him. The forest was whisper quiet, heavy with shadows. I typed back, I'm not there yet. Where are you? No reply. Heart thudding, I broke into a sprint, branches scraping my arms as I pushed through. I reached the pond and stood at the edge, panting, scanning every tree, every shadow. No Ethan. The water shimmered, black and still. The trees loomed in a full circle around the pond. There was nowhere to hide, and he wasn't there. I pulled out the messenger again. My last message, unread. I called out his name, the sound of my voice bouncing back to me, swallowed by the trees. And then I realized, I hadn't started the fire yet. If I stayed here too long, I'd never find the campsite again in the dark. I had to go back. Fast. The woods grew darker with every step. Every snap of a twig made my pulse spike. That message, I see you, kept playing over and over in my head. Then, just before I reached the clearing, I saw it. An orange glow, flickering through the trees. Our campfire. Someone had lit it. I smiled, thinking maybe Ethan made it back after all. But as I stepped into the clearing, I stopped dead in my tracks. Someone was standing by the fire. And it wasn't Ethan. The figure turned, just slightly, and then bolted, sprinting away from the fire into the woods. Gone in seconds. I rushed into camp, my heart in my throat. I grabbed my messenger and fired off a string of messages to Ethan. My hands were shaking. Then, out of the darkness, I heard running. I turned, and Ethan came bursting into the clearing, eyes wide, breathing hard. "We need to leave," he gasped. "I know," I said. "I saw someone. They were standing by the fire. It wasn't you." Ethan nodded, pale. "I saw him too. At the pond. I thought it was you at first, but when I got closer, I saw his face. And something was wrong. His smile, it was just wrong." He said he tried talking to the man, asked if he knew the way back. But the man didn't answer. He just kept walking forward, grinning. Unblinking. Unnatural. That was enough to send Ethan into a full sprint, hoping he was running in the right direction. Apparently, he saw the fire and followed it back. That fire, lit by whoever was watching us. We didn't wait. We threw everything into our packs and left camp behind. The hike back was like something out of a nightmare. Every shadow was alive. Every sound made us flinch. And all the while, we felt like something was still out there, just behind us. Just out of sight. We made it back to the car. Somehow. But I still think about that message, that voice in the trees, the presence we never saw until it was too late. He was out there the first night. Watching. Waiting. The stranger behind the glass. 7 or 8 months later, I was burned out. Just needed a break from the city, something quiet, away from people, traffic, and all the noise constantly clawing at your brain. So I booked a cheap Airbnb. Didn't care about the amenities or the town. I just zoomed out on the map, picked a pin in the middle of nowhere, and hit reserve. The place was advertised as a cabin, but it felt more like a weathered, leaning house sitting alone in a pocket of trees just outside a small town. No neighbors. No other houses. The driveway was this dirt trail carved into the forest like a scar. It took me over 6 hours to get there, most of it winding through dead stretches of backroads where you could go an hour without seeing another car. And the weirdness started right when I got to town. The streets were practically deserted, even though it was late afternoon. No kids on bikes. No folks mowing lawns or chatting by the roadside. The only movement came from flickering neon signs in gas stations or bars with no one inside. It felt like I'd stumbled into one of those eerie small towns from an old horror flick. Everything looked real, but something was off. I stopped at a grocery store to pick up food for the next few days. Inside, it was silent. Just me, the hum of old freezers, and maybe 3 other shoppers. But they didn't feel like shoppers. They felt like sentries. Every person I passed locked eyes with me. No nods. No smiles. Just flat, icy stares that trailed me until I turned a corner. The kind of look that makes your skin crawl without you even realizing why. Like they knew I wasn't from around there. Like I wasn't supposed to be here. I told myself I was being paranoid. I paid, left, and drove straight back to the cabin. The rest of the day was uneventful. I unpacked, settled in, watched some dumb reality show on the dusty living room TV. It felt peaceful in a fragile sort of way. Outside, the forest pressed in on the windows like a second set of walls. By the next night, a storm had rolled in. One of those classic downpours that pounds on the roof like fists and rattles the windows just enough to keep you on edge. I was stretched out on the couch, half dozing, when something snapped me awake. A knock. One single knock on the front door. My heart thudded. I sat up, confused. Who the hell knocks on a stranger's Airbnb in the middle of a storm like this? I checked my phone. No texts. No alerts from the host. And no other knock followed. I crept toward the door and looked out the peephole, but it was too dark. There was no porch light, and the rain was like a curtain. I couldn't see a damn thing. I didn't open the door. Minutes passed. Maybe even half an hour. I tried convincing myself it was nothing. Maybe something fell. Maybe the wind slammed a branch into the doorframe. My brain was tossing up excuses just to keep from spiraling. So I laid back down. The storm kept howling. The TV buzzed in the background. And then, a cough. A man's cough, low and quick, like someone trying to stifle it. It came from behind me. I whipped around and caught a flicker of movement at the window. Someone had been standing there, watching me from outside in the rain. I didn't even think. I grabbed my phone and called 911. I told the dispatcher everything, that I was alone, someone had been watching me, and I was terrified. She said an officer was already nearby and would arrive in a few minutes. And sure enough, 3 minutes later, I saw the headlights pull into the driveway. Relief washed over me. I opened the door before he even knocked. But when I explained what happened, his reaction was, "Off. That's it?" he said flatly. No concern. No urgency. No writing anything down. Just that same cold, distant expression I saw in the grocery store. Like I'd inconvenienced him by calling. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "If anything actually happens, give us another call." Then he turned, walked back to his car, and left. I stood there stunned. The guy hadn't even checked the perimeter. That was the moment it clicked. The unease. The looks. The silence. Something was wrong with this town. Something deeper than just creepy vibes. I slammed the door, locked it, and immediately started packing. I wasn't staying another night. But I'd barely gotten my bag unzipped when... Bang! 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 3 heavy knocks. Not like the first one. These were angry. Forceful. Whoever it was. Hadn't left. I didn't go to the door. I didn't even look this time. I knew. This wasn't some drunk neighbor. This wasn't the Airbnb host coming to check on me. They were still out there. Waiting. And somehow, I knew they'd been watching me this entire time. I peeked out the bedroom window. The cop car was gone, just like I feared. The pounding at the front door continued, slow and steady. Then it stopped. I held my breath, thinking maybe they gave up. Maybe they were gone. But no. Something moved. Back at the same window where I'd seen them before. A shadow shifted. Just barely. That was it. That was all I needed. I threw on my backpack, gripped my keys, and ran for the door. I flung it open and sprinted into the storm, not looking back. The rain was blinding. I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me. My legs were moving on instinct, feet slamming into the mud as I scrambled for the car. I didn't know if they were behind me. They could have been an inch from grabbing me for all I knew. I jumped in, turned the key, and gunned it. Down the driveway. Onto the road. Through the trees. Gone. I didn't stop until I was miles away. I drove straight home, shaking, soaked, adrenaline crashing in waves. The worst part? I still don't know who was out there. I don't know if it was one person or a group. I don't know if the town was in on it. But something about their faces. Their eyes. They didn't look surprised that I was being stalked. They looked annoyed that I got away. The friend who wasn't. Josh and I had been tight since our senior year of college. We weren't just classmates, we were ride or die, late night gaming, tell each other everything kind of friends. Even after graduation, when life pulled us in different directions, jobs, rent, hours apart, we kept that connection going. Constant texting. Weekend matches online. Laughs that never needed warming up. So when he called me that Thursday out of nowhere, saying his girlfriend was out of town and asking if I wanted to crash for the weekend, it felt like old times. But something in his voice felt off. Like he just rolled out of bed, or hadn't slept at all. Still, I missed the guy. I didn't ask too many questions. I said yeah. The next morning, I packed a bag, hit the road, made a couple stops for drinks and snacks, and rolled up to his place around 4:30. Josh and his girlfriend had bought the house right after graduation. Cheap, kind of run down, a bit of a fixer-upper out in the middle of nowhere. 30 minutes from the old college town, not quite in a neighborhood, just a lonely house surrounded by empty fields and overgrown trees. I knocked. Then waited. Then knocked again. Took him 5 full minutes to answer the door. And when he did, he didn't look like Josh. I mean, it was him, physically. Same hair, same hoodie he always wore. But something was different. His eyes were sunken. His skin looked pale. He moved like he was dragging every bone in his body. The energy, the spark he always had, was just gone. We sat down, played some Xbox, popped open a couple drinks, tried to recapture that old rhythm. But it never came. He barely talked. Just stared at the screen. Nodded when I cracked a joke. Took slow sips of his beer like his mind was somewhere else. Honestly, it felt like I was in the room with a stranger who happened to know all my inside jokes. I tried brushing it off. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe things had been rough lately. But the more I talked, the more distant he got. At one point, I suggested we turn in early, rest up so we could actually enjoy Saturday. But he didn't like that. No, he said, his voice all gravel and sleep. Let's stay up. Just a little longer. It wasn't a suggestion. It felt more like a plea. Or an order. I hesitated. Agreed to give it 30 more minutes. It was the longest 30 minutes of my life. We sat in near silence, sipping, watching something on mute. I kept glancing at him, waiting for a sign that the real Josh was still in there. Nothing. Eventually, I stood up and said I was calling it. I was tired. I needed to crash. He stared at me for a moment, expression blank, then just nodded. I headed into the guest room. The moment I opened the door, something felt wrong. The room was completely empty, aside from a small twin bed shoved against the wall. No nightstand. No lamp. Not even curtains. Just a brand new looking mattress in a bare room. Almost like it was set up just for this visit. Like a stage set. I sat down, pulled out my phone, and texted his girlfriend. We'd met a few times, weren't super close, but I figured she'd at least know what was going on. Maybe he was going through something. Depression, meds, whatever. I just wrote, "Hey, Josh is acting really weird. Has he been okay lately?" Her reply came back fast. "We broke up. I moved out 4 months ago. I haven't talked to him since." I stared at the message. 4 months? He told me she was just out of town for the weekend. Why about that? Why invite me now? The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My stomach turned to stone. And then, I saw it. A shadow. Right under the door. Someone was standing just outside the room. My heart pounded. I stayed perfectly still. I watched the shadow shift, then slowly move away. I crept to the door, pressed my ear to it. Nothing. I opened it. The hallway was dark. Completely still. The only light came from down the hall. His bedroom door was wide open. I started to walk, but something caught my eye. On the back of the guest room door, something had been installed while I was inside. A mounting bracket. Like the kind used to attach a deadbolt. One side screwed into the wall, the other into the door. He had tried to lock me in. I took a slow, shaky step back, then another. And that's when I saw it. On the kitchen counter. An open package. A brand new deadbolt. Still half wrapped in plastic. Just sitting there like a confession. I heard footsteps. Fast ones. Behind me. I spun around. Josh was there. Staring. Same tired eyes. Same blank face. No expression. No explanation. I asked, "What are you trying to do?" He didn't answer. He took a step forward. I bolted for the door. He called my name as I yanked it open, his voice low, drawling, almost inhuman. Like someone pretending to be Josh. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I got in my car and tore down that road like my life depended on it. Because I think it did. By the time I got home, he had blocked me on everything. Phone, social media, games. Like I was never supposed to tell anyone. And the worst part? I didn't go to the police. I didn't have proof. Nothing actually happened. He didn't hurt me. But I still think about that deadbolt. The shadow. The silence in that house. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd gone to sleep. What was his plan? Was it even him? I'd known Josh for 3 years. But that night, I realized, maybe I never knew him at all.